Hello and welcome to some insane weather conditions in Gotland. It's like 7-8 degrees plus, and it's just before Christmas. Sudden wind, sunny weather. I'm like shaking how excited I am. We have about 2 hours until sunset, so we're gonna begin fishing right away. I'm gonna explain some about how I use a floating line, what common mistakes that I see people do when fishing a floating line. They misunderstood how I use it. Today I'm gonna make the video where I explain everything about it. So let's do this. One of the mistakes with fishing a floating line that I see begins with already before fishing or casting at all. And that has to do with tippet length or leader length. And I see I've done this mistake today. I feel it's a little bit short. Here I have a tapered 9-foot leader, and from there I have the dropper fly in a tip string, and after that I have about a meter of leader. This is a very typical sea trout leader, but when you're fishing with a floating line I would say this is too short. So I'm gonna extend this to be a full arm width of leader, so close to 2 meters, so 1.60 m or such. That's how long I want this additional tippet to be. So when you have a tippet ring, you prepare first a tag end with just a short leader like this. So now you can replace the leader parts individually. You can have the entire lower part of the rig intact, and then you change the upper part, or the opposite. That's probably the most common you would do. Replace this lower end, which is affected most by rocks and stuff, scratched and damaged. So that's I'm putting on a little gray bait fish here. Since the water is so clear, I think that could be a good option. So even before we have started fishing, we made one adjustment to what's usually misunderstood about fishing a floating line. So now we have extended with 9-foot taper leader and an additional 5-foot leader, I would say 5 or 6. So it's like a proper 15-foot in total length leader, so more than 1.5 rod length. So that's step 1. Mistake number 2 that I see people do with fishing a floating line is that they misunderstood where the fish is, or how important the shallow waters they are. Just to show you here, I'm beginning to fish with just a little bit of water splashing on my toes. That's how shallow I want to fish. There's so many times I catch the biggest and most fish in the very most shallow water. That's where the most food is, so why shouldn't the fish be there? So important. To do a little update, I fished the shallow waters, didn't have anything there, so now I moved out to a little bit deeper water, but still do a check that I'm less than knee-deep water when I'm standing here, and that is further out in my opinion. So I'm still fishing in very shallow water all day. Yep, there it is. It took the pink mulkis. Casting along the shoreline. So as you see, even these small sea trout eat these juicy mulcus flies. Great stuff. Here's the fly. It's tied on a size 1 attitude streamer. Very nice. So that's exactly what I was talking about. How important it is to fish parallel. I've been casting outwards, inwards, but this parallel cast, man, they're so important to do. It took the mulcus, the shiny glittery ball, which is just ideal in clear and sunny, clear water and sunshine, some big waves. Then that fly is just perfect. The first time in a while I used it, but I felt like today is the day. Super fun, a small one, but in very shallow water. It's so fun to be able to like read and like look at, oh, there it looks like it's a little bit deeper, cast there, and there's instant hard strike. Really, really fun. Gonna continue here, there's probably more fish around. So I did some more casts there without any more contacts. The sun is quickly about to settle here, and we have to go further onto step 3, and that I've given a little bit of a hint about already in some casts here. Stuck in seaweed. But that is really allowing the flies to sink. That's one of the key things about fishing on the coast in general, and where I see the biggest advantage in using a floating line. Because when you throw out the flies into deep water, it is a big mistake if you start to retrieve right away, I would say. No matter what kind of line you have, the flies will be just in the surface film for the beginning, the first few meters. And that's usually not where you have the contacts. You want to be below the surface film when you do the retrieve, especially in deeper water. So what I feel I dare to do when I have a floating line is that when I make a cast far out, I feel safe allowing the flies to sink for maybe up to 10-15 seconds sometimes. Just letting them drop down, like imagine fishing a sinking tip of a fly line. That's sort of what I do with these long leaders. So allowing them to sink down. Then during the retrieve I can speed up the retrieve when I come in closer. So also, since the fly line is on top of the surface, when I speed up, the flies will go more shallow, so I'm able to fish them all the way into the shore without getting caught. I think that's very important, to not get stuck in the bottom. That's so important with sea trout. When you have just a few bites in the day, you want to make sure that you have a very, very sharp hook. So here I have my 15 to 16 foot leader, floating line, and just make a cast straight out. I let it land there, and I just do nothing. I of course hold the line, because quite often actually at least it happens that fish takes it instantly when it's just dropping like this. Now I've given it a proper sink. I know it's pretty deep there. You can estimate on how deep you think it is, and allowing it to to sink down to a proper depth. The important thing is just to get rid of the surface film. And if I feel like I'm snagging the bottom a little bit, I touch the seaweed on the bottom, like I did now. I just speed it up slightly, so I get flies to lift on the bottom. I'm so often having strikes close in here, the last few meters. So what I always do is that I retrieve all the way into the end of the fly line. I retrieve and I look at the flies and behind the flies to see if there is any swirl of a sea trout. I see so the flies are okay, then I make my next cast. When I fish an intermediate line, I'm tempted to cheat with the last bit because of the risk to get stuck in the bottom. But I think it's a very, very important part of the retrieve. So I definitely don't want to miss out on that. So those are the 3 things I do care the most about. Do not have a long enough leader, that's number 1. Number 2 is that they don't fish enough in the shallow waters. And number 3, when they fish in the deeper water, they don't let the fly sink enough. And also in the very shallow water, I let the fly sink a little bit, just to get through that surface film. So through the whole retrieve, I'm in the strike zone, so to say. So I'm not like dragging it in the surface. Those are the 3 things. Behind me, I have quite big waves, as you will see. I'll demonstrate a common thing that people say, that the intermediate line sort of cuts through the waves instead of going on top and like in every wave like this. And to a certain extent that's true. And if you feel like that does it for you with intermediate line, then that's great for you. I'm not trying to convince you to change or anything. I'm just giving it my point of view, and also explain when people ask me like, okay, what line do you use? I say a floating line. Then I don't want them to make the mistakes and misunderstandings and fishing them like they usually do. You need to do some adaptations when fishing a floating line. And those are these 3 things. But I'm gonna show you a little thought or a different mindset for you to when fishing in waves. What I like about the floating line and why I still use it in big waves like this. If I have an unharmed hook with a little bit less contact due to that it goes up in the waves, I'm fine with that. That's something that I can live with. I know that my flies are gonna be with a razor sharp hook. Very, very sharp. So they are very likely to get hooked on these tiny hook sizes when fishing with less contact. And with tiny hook sizes, I mean tiny compared to like a pike hook or such. Sea trout hooks in general. So up to size 1 is what I fish and have no trouble hooking them when I don't have perfect conditions or perfect contact with the flies. Yeah. Another little fella. This one took on the other fly. Wow, they're small today. Very, very small. This is even tinier. Look at this. It's like long as the handle. Very small little trout. Gonna let it go. I cast it out, let it sink in the beginning, and then I can retrieve it in the middle of the water the entire way. And I was far away from having good contact with the fly when that took. It was quite big waves. and I was not sure if there even was a fish there. I just kept on retrieving, and that was enough to get the fly to set in the fish mouth, since it was a very sharp hook. Awesome! And I have 2 flies catching fish now. The other fly is a Super Boo stickleback, sort of. A little new twist I've done on it. I'm gonna maybe do that in a future video. Great fun. 2 fish here now. They're babies, but whatever. Alright, that's been it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. It was fun to show the floating line fishing like I want it to be, and how I think about retrieving, and then just get instant results like that. It's a lot of fun, and I hope it was useful as well. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you in the next one.